How about that fourth quarter by Alex Caruso and the Thunder? I mean, that's just incredible basketball. Second and third quarter, Memphis started to have it going, and just like that in a snap, Caruso ends it all. Starts to blow up every single play, every single action they have on the floor. I mean, at one point he's playing micro ball and guarding Jaren Jackson very effectively, making sure that he doesn't get the ball in the post, making sure he's not getting deep in the paint, making sure that the pass is not even going to be allowed because he's playing so well on those entry passes. And we talk about this Thunder team and their ability to turn on a switch. I don't think anyone in the league that I've ever seen has done it better than Caruso himself, making sure Memphis goes to Plan B, Plan C on offense. If they still even have the ball, if he hasn't even just stole it from their heart already, incredible offensively as well. He he's playing well in transition. He's hitting 3 point shots. Just a perfect defensive performance. And the second unit so far in the playoffs is a story for the Thunder. Um, Basically the entire supporting cast. Again, outside of Shea, like this is just incredible. That I think you can argue to a fact that every single player outside of Shea has risen from their regular season performance so far, which feels crazy to say and feels almost impossible to do. Um, like guys like Lou Dort. Lou Dort has throughout the first two games of the playoffs, and I mentioned this last time. He has been a legitimately great passer, legitimately great decision maker, and last playoff time did I had some doubt in my mind if he would even be a long term guy because of his offensive decision making issues against Dallas, where he just couldn't attack a closeout, where he couldn't finish at the rim, but not just finishing at the rim. He was taking shots at the rim, then not finishing. That's the issue. Now he's just not taking shots at the rim. He's making sure that every time he drives, the ball is gonna be kicked out. So he had like two or three great plays by Dort today on the drive. He had this one pass that I'll try to clip up later to Chet, which is just a beautiful read. I think it was like a skip pass, and Chet just happens to miss it. But having that level of connectivity from all your role players is just impressive. And if we're gonna talk about the supporting cast outside of Shea, we have to talk about Chet Holmgren today. Both ends. The most impressive part for me, for in terms of Chet, is his overall motor has been so good in the first two games of the playoffs, and I think that's why he's been so good on the boards. He hasn't looked tired of gas at all. He looks really well in shape, and he was posed with a challenge in his regard, right? Because Hardenstein's gonna be guarding the weaker rebounder in the front court in Jaren Jackson Jr. because he's better on ball against Jaren, right? So now Chet is posed with a matchup against Zach Edey, who is a 7'4", bigger I wouldn't say bigger body, but bigger body than Chet, and he's been a really good rebounder this year for the most part. Obviously, Chet has some advantages, but if there's anything that Memphis is going to be able to exploit in this matchup, it's going to be a rebounding on Chet versus Edie because Jared's going to be playing on the perimeter a lot, going to be playing from the weak side on the post, so he Hartenstein won't be able to impact on the boards as much. But Chet has made Edie a non-factor in terms of the boards, in terms of any offensive creation. A huge part of him, and then the off-ball defense, the drop defense, the technique. I mean, Chet Holmgren is the best. It was one of the, if not best, defender in the world, and he was like that last year. He just didn't get his credit because of how the Thunder's playoff season obviously ended. But Pelicans. He might have had one of the best defensive debuts we ever seen. I mean, he had two or three games that series where he I mean, game four, game one. I think he single handedly won the Thunder those games in the clutch voters. But for the most part, he shut Jaw from getting all the way deep in the paint, which is all you can really do against a downhill force like that. And then the fourth quarter and first quarter, I mean, yeah, that was insane. Every single pick and roll, every single pick and roll that they try to come to, it just feels like there's no space because Chet can cover so much length. Chet is so versatile. First quarter, it was actually really funny because I was talking about this on the playback with Jace that they were actually trying to attack Chet on switches because obviously Memphis' offense was really bad, and I understand from their perspective, you want to find any weak point, and I guess they were trying to expose Chet on the perimeter. So they do a bunch of double screens to eventually get Chet off of 80 and then eventually get him on his action. And uh, a few times where he's ended up with Bane, a few times where he's ended up with Aldama or Pippen, and they just go nowhere, man. They just absolutely went nowhere. And Chet, his entire career so far, he's been extremely underrated under perimeter because he doesn't get the ability to do it much. But just on top of my mind, he had so many good moments against Boston. Both times he's played them in his career, where Tatum and Brown are trying to, because that's all they do. Tatum and Brown, all they do is switch hunt. They try to switch hunt Chet, and Chet just completely shuts that shit down. He he has really light feet. He gets off the ground really quick, which obviously is why he has such a good second jump on these blocks. And then he also has just understand like a very elite understanding of positioning and where he should be on the court. And IQ wins over everything in this league. So again, just when they're watching Chet Holmgren, just realize that even the little things, even the possessions that don't end up with a block, don't end up with a loud play. He's making such a large impact in every single action he's in. You are generally watching all time great defender rise up. Offensively, really solid today. Had a few nice touch shots. He shot a good amount of 3 pointers. I think he shot 8 3 pointers, which is obviously very welcome from a player like Chet. I'm very happy with how he's approached the first 2 games offensively. But main thing is just the defense being awesome and then being able to keep it down on the boards. That's really all you want from Chet. Moving on to the next young star, JDub. And I mean, these first 2 games is exactly what you wanted from him. Um, there's a fine line between JDub uh, being better in the playoffs and also being overtasked to the point where you feel like you're over relying. And this felt like the perfect balance because JDub is in that healthy range of high teens shot attempts, but he's also not. I think there was times not last year, this year where Jada was playing in the second unit, and it almost feels like he's hijacking the offense, not because it's his fault, but because there's nothing else going on, right? So the second unit offense, the offense without Shea, or whenever Shea shut off, usually just becomes Jada just shoot a long mid range and try to figure something out. But now it just feels a lot more free flowing for Jada. It feels a lot more free flowing for the entire offense, and it's obviously been shown in results. I think Chet coming back. I think the double big a lot, but I mean he's looked perfect. He's been crafty. I think that's another thing. He's been really crafty. He's had some moments in the past this year where you watch him and you kind of feel like he's playing a bit predetermined. You know, he'll go down the floor and already know that no matter what, I'm gonna shoot that step back mid range right there. And I feel like that can sometimes create some ugly offense. But right now he's playing very reactive, and I've noticed this ever since he came back from injury. Back in I want to say March. He came back from injury in March. Ever since he's come back, I don't know if how much film he watched, how much like what he went through, but he just feels like he's much more reactive, much more crafty. He's much better at reading what the defense is giving him. You can kind of see it in like the spin moves he makes, the the improved footwork. There's a few plays like I think there's one where he just gets a defender jumping in the post and then he blows a layup, which was an open look, just happens to blow it. But like you didn't really see that shot by J Dub earlier in the year. It just felt like very I'm either gonna get a mid range in the pick and roll or I'm gonna score in transition. There was really no other middle ground for J Dub, but now it feels like he's diversifying his scoring attacks. He's now become more efficient. He's become getting to the line more. I don't think He's got there much in the first 2 games, but that's more of like a whole season trend that J Dub has really started to put together. Obviously, there's an elephant in the room. Again, I said this last time, so my bad for repeating the phrase, but Shea struggled again, and the second I realized that Shea came off to a slow start in game 2, my the way I viewed the game after the first quarter was just trying to figure out what Memphis exactly is trying to do, and why Shea is shooting so many 3 pointers. And it's kind of obvious that they're running a similar scheme, or if you want to say, to what New Orleans was doing. And It's basically to prevent no matter what. I mean, this kind of sounds like every team would do it, but to shut off Shea from like breaking the free throw line, really, right? Basically, making sure that whenever Shea gets the ball, he doesn't. He's only gonna be seeing bodies at the free throw line and the middle of the floor, which he likes to operate in, to make sure like he's probably more passive against driving from that standpoint and trying to force Shea to score in other areas of the floor. So I think like the obvious question is like, what's the best way to counter that? Because you just don't want Shea to be forcing this high volume 3 point shooting, and there really isn't a specific way you can counter that in terms of top of the key attacks. Really, the counter is just having the offense be so good to a point where they can't run it, and that's kind of what they've done. Which is why I think Game Three might be a game where Shea goes off because at this point, helping so much off of JDub, Dort, Wiggins, Joe, whoever the guys are at the wing, whoever the nail defenders are helping off of to protect Shea from driving. At some point, you've got to make that adjustment and just. I'm not saying live with Shea 1-on-1, but you can't just rely on really smart offensive players and so far really good shooters over the course of the season to just start missing shots. I guess that was their plan going into the series. Just pray you get some good variance and maybe force force a game or two where you can have a chance. Which I mean, if you're the Memphis Grizzlies and you're obviously outmatched talent wise, I don't think it's a horrible idea, especially when you don't have any guys who can really contain Shea, right? If you had maybe Jalen Wells, who can at least like make sure Shea doesn't go for 50 if he's guarded like more traditionally on him, I think then maybe they don't concede these open shots as much. But at this point, they're playing the anything but Shea defense, and I think people don't see this, and I think people are getting frustrated because Shea's not gonna get blitzed. Shea's not getting like hard hedge. It doesn't look like Shea's clearly seeing bodies because he's just not attacking where the bodies are. If that makes sense, you know, Shea knows that the players are gonna react in a certain way, so he's not gonna go to the middle of the paint where when he knows he's gonna be collapsed and probably expose his handle or have to pick up his dribble. So he's passing before that. So that's the main thing with Shea. In terms of he himself as a scorer, as a shooter, I mean, Shea's mid range has been kind of off the last few weeks, so just you gotta hope that starts to get going. I do think he can find a way to score the series if they do play the same style from the post. I think there's a few looks he had today, and he didn't shoot many shots from the post area or from the baseline. If that sounds a little clear, he did shoot a lot, but like I think Memphis was really late in sending help. So I think Shea could have got a few jumpers off, got a few clean looks on it, but I think he was just waiting a little too long. I think again he's a bit out of rhythm because like he's not really being able to create from a top to key standpoint. And I know there'll be like someone like probably thinking right now, is Shea not being able to create from this situation not an issue? In theory it is, but like does it really matter because when they play a certain style of defense, the Thunder are just destroying them offensively, right? When Shea's on the court, they have 130 offensive rating this series, maybe a bit higher. I might be wrong on those numbers, but with Shea, I think you just kind of have to hope that he starts hitting his jumpers. I don't think the rim shots will really come this series, which kind of sucks because I think so far now in Shea's playoff career as a number one, he's been shut off at the rim a very good amount. So I think you'll have to I think I'll have to look back at the film and obviously just try to think like what are some other counters to that because I don't think you just want to concede Shea's best attack of offense that easily, right? You don't want to have to, especially late in games. But I think late in games they did a lot better job against New Orleans in the playoffs. If you remember, game one and game four, last 2 minutes, they were a lot better against switches, a lot better against Shea, uh, a lot better at spacing the floor for Shea. So we really haven't seen many situations where you kind of need to pull those sets out. So I'm not too worried about Shea, but I mean it's definitely been a really bad 2 games as a scorer, and I think you can never be like too optimistic about that when it's your best player, right? Especially in a limited playoff sample. But He was really good against Dallas last year. He struggled against the Pels for most of the series. So like again, we're just gonna have to wait. We're just gonna have to wait with Shea and see what type of counters we have. But like at the end of the day, do the Thunder really need counters, or do they just wait until Memphis changes their defense, right? Because if you're scoring 130 points, scoring 70 points and a half, they can keep playing that. Yes, Shea won't get his stats. Yes, Shea will not be able to get clean looks off. Yes, Shea will be uncomfortable. But the team as a whole is just going to continue dominating offensively. So I don't know. I'm not going to look too much into it, but it's definitely something that I think, if anything, is worth monitoring for the rest of the series, the rest of the likely 2 games left in the series. I think it's probably just how Shea starts to navigate and try to adjust to this defense over time. I'm going to try to make a recap video for every single Thunder playoff game and put a film breakdown the next day, which I plan to do tomorrow. So if you guys like this type of video, let me know. If you guys have any Thunder related questions, I'll be happy to answer them or need any clarity on anything I spoke about. I appreciate all of y'all. Thunder up.